Welcome to Helping Organizations Thrive. Today I have the pleasure of Antoni Tzavelas on the show. Good morning or good afternoon to you, Antoni.
Yes, for me it is morning. So good afternoon to you and good morning
Yes,
to me.
yes. Good. Always good to speak to my Canadian friends. With my daughter being in Canada as well, so it's good to have you on have you on the show. Just tell the audience a bit about you. You are a public speaker on happiness.
Yes.
I love this tagline you have: make happiness your company's superpower. And funnily enough, we will be exploring how to bring happiness to the workplace. So before we go there, Antoni, I'd like to ask you, what do you love about what you do?
What do I love about what I do? Well, I mean, sharing happiness is at the core of what I do. And being in corporate for almost 2 decades, it showed me that we can go through a lot of really hard times and really just go through the day, not really caring about what we do, not being fulfilled. And I believe it is a human right to be able to go to work happy, and sharing that message with as many people as possible. That's what gets me up in the morning.
That's fantastic. And ever since I've known you a number of years now, and you always bring a smile to my face, and you exude happiness, and it's done in such a lovely way that inspires people and motivates people. And we were just talking offline before, before we get into about happiness within the workplace. I'd like to really sort of touch on almost why are you so happy, and not in a I'm annoyed that you're really happy. Not in that sense. I want to understand some of the secrets, the understanding of the learning, the practices that you do that enables you to be so positive and so happy and bring that joy, even when you're feeling ill, even when you're not so great or things are not going as well in your world. You still have this happiness about you, and so it'd be good to sort of share that if you're okay with that.
Yes, of course. Well, Julian, I just have to be straight up here. Things are about to get deep because my why comes from a really deep place where it goes all the way back to my childhood. And so I grew up in a very controlled environment, chaotic, if you will. And my father was a tyrant. He was very controlling, and he was very verbally and physically abusive. And so as a child, I was very unhappy because of this. And it brought me a lot of tears, it brought me a lot of heartache, and at times it broke me. Now, there was a bright side to it, and that was my mother, who gave me the tools to be able to navigate this chaos. And the tools were positivity and happiness. And every day she would say to me, Antoni, you have to be positive. You have to look at what has been given to you and look at it as a gift. Because my mom grew up in a very um, poor environment. She didn't have a lot of money. Her family didn't have a lot of money, and they worked on a farm, and they had a very small house. So everything that's been given to her, she looked at it as a gift, and she wanted that for her children as well. She wanted them to take on that positivity and happiness that she grew up with. As time went on, and my mother was telling me this every single day like a mantra, it became who I was because I started to think that way. I started to think about the positive things in my life, about gratitude, about happiness, and how I can show up that way all the time. And eventually, that's how I did show up. And through that guidance, through having happiness as my North Star, it allowed me to navigate the chaos of not only my childhood, but it allowed me to navigate the chaos that came afterwards when I was broke, when I was changing careers. For those of you who don't know, I changed careers 6 times. And navigating that was very was very difficult, but using happiness as my North Star, it seemed so much easier. And, this is where, ironically, it gets into resilience. It allowed me to be resilient. And over time, I wanted to, as you say, figure out what it is that makes me happy. What I like to call recipe for happiness. And my recipe for happiness was just that. It was changing my mindset. But it happened over the past few decades without me even knowing it. And now I really want to share that with others. I want other people to find their recipe for happiness. And so this is has become not only my why, but it has become my purpose. And I feel that it is my mother's legacy for me to live out.
Well, you have a amazing why there and purpose, but also amazing mum who surprisingly all those years ago gave you some real helpful tools and
Yeah.
strategies to help you overcome some of those difficulties. And I'm sorry you had such a difficult sort of childhood. It must have been horrible for you. Um, just take us back to, if you've made that the time when you were with as a child and those
Mhm.
difficult moments. What were the things? And at the time you probably didn't, probably more on a reflection, realizing what you were doing. But what were you doing? Were these daily things? Were they just what your mum told you? What did you start to put in process within your life?
So whenever I showed up outside of my time at home, so whenever I went to school, when I went to um, just events and sessions that happened after school, I always showed up happy. And showing up like that constantly allowed me to practice positivity, practice happiness, practice gratitude. And this allowed me to take that with me home. And even though there was the chaos happening at home, I remembered of the great things that had happened. So, practicing a mindset or an attitude of gratitude where it allowed me to kind of cut out the bad tone, if you will, of what was happening at home. And it got me through. It got me through to a point where when I was being hit, it got to a point where I would just laugh.
Huh,
And that's when the hitting stopped, actually.
interesting.
I mean, think
That's
about it.
interesting.
When you're hitting somebody and they laugh at you, what are you gonna do? You're gonna laugh.
No. So actually, your that almost sort of a manifestation of your happiness actually had an impact
It
by
did.
you laughing, and then ultimately they're not hitting you anymore, which is incredible, really.
Yeah.
Wow. That's yeah. I'm quite shocked by that. Really, that's wonderful to hear. That sort of power of doing that. And this is, you don't, and we've got to be careful here because there's a potential, almost the toxic positivity of life where people just think you just got to think positive and get through life, because we know naturally as human beings we have a negative bias. That's the sort of
Yes.
survival instincts within us where we naturally tilt toward the negative, and therefore we have to sort of tilt it the other way to see the more positive. How do we sort of stop that, almost that toxic positivity where people go around and just think positive, and it's not about just that, is it? There's some practices you're put in place and some ways that still keeps it real, doesn't it, in the real situation?
Yeah. So there will always be times of heartache and pain. There will always be times where we're just not feeling up to it. We don't want to get out of bed because We're just having a bad day, and that's okay. We're human. We're allowed to be unhappy at times. What I find that can bring us back to a happier place is acceptance. So this is practicing what we all know as emotional intelligence. So we're being aware of our emotions and trying to understand what is making us unhappy or what is giving us this emotion, and allowing ourselves to accept what is happening, and then turning that around to say, well, let's think about some things that I'm grateful for.
Mm.
And that actually helps you offset the negative bias that you have. Now, this happens a lot in the workplace where you're happy, but other people are having a bad day. And that's okay too. As I said, when it comes to acceptance, it's like, hey, I'm noticing that you're having a bad day, and I'm really sorry that you're having it. Is there anything that I can do to help?
Mm.
And when other people hear the acceptance, they feel seen, they feel heard, because now all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, I am in a bad mood, and that can help give them the reflection that they need in order to get back to a happier place.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's really helpful. And I think that acceptance sometimes in life, where things will happen, tough things will happen in our lives that are outside our control, and rather than either complaining at something in the world or somebody else or blaming, just accept it has happened. I have lost my job, I have lost a client, I have become ill, whatever it may be, is the place to start, isn't it? And from there, and as you say, it's that. And you talked a lot about gratitude, and I presume gratitude is almost like a daily thing for you. And I know it is for me, where and I notice myself sometimes when I feel that negativity, whether it's during my business or personal things, and I go, oh, I'm starting to shift it, and I notice it, and I think, okay, what am I grateful for? And I start to go through various things, whether it's simple things of, oh, it's a sunny day today, and go and have a walk or a run, through to I've got lovely family, I've got whatever it may be. You just
Yeah,
go for it, and suddenly you see this shift. You can feel the shift almost instantly.
totally.
um, there's a physiological thing. There's lots of research done on it. Serotonin, dopamine just starts to rise, and it's an amazing thing. And I presume you're doing this on a daily thing, as a
Yes.
practice.
And that's the thing, is that the more you do it, the more you start to do it subconsciously
Mm.
without even thinking. You're just like, oh, well, oh, this happened, but you know what? This other great thing happened. Or um, usually my wife is one to remind me when I say something, that is out of character. She'll say to me, "Hey, what about all the great things that have happened today?" And we actually have a practice that we do as a family. Usually around dinner time, we share our highlight or our moment of gratitude
Mm.
around the dinner table, and it really livens up the environment, and it ends our day on a high note.
Mm. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's that looking for, and it sounds very sort of cliche, that the silver lining in the storm sometimes, in the sort of, and it is, there's always something, and I start to, and I use that a lot in terms of look for the learning. What's the opportunity to learn from this? What feedback are you getting? What insights you get? There's something in this, and it shifts you from a negative perspective to a more positive, looking for ideas, looking for sort of opportunities, and it sort of does that little shift. And life's so much better that way. It doesn't mean it's all rosy. It doesn't mean it's
No.
pain free, or you got money pouring out everywhere, all this sort of stuff. It is that's not happiness. That's not happiness. It's that
No.
completely satisfied in yourself and knowing your why. And I talk a lot about that, having your purpose, having clarity of your purpose. So how do we thinking about the workplace now? And I almost want to sort of flip it and almost say, what makes a workplace not a happy place to be from your experience? And I'm sure you've experienced not so happy place to work, because I want to, but there's people listening now who are in a possibly not in a happy workplace, and I just want
Yeah.
you to sort of identify with them a little bit.
Yeah. So this is where things can get difficult for the fact that we can't change others, and that's just human nature, right? um as coaches, we know that you can't change other people because they have it in themselves to change what it is that they want. So now, I over the years that I have coached teams, I've looked at, how can we change things? And the only way to change things is to change ourselves. What are we doing where we're modeling what we want to see in others? So, for instance, I love to come in as the change agent. So it could be there's a lot of times where I would show up in teams and they would have the crappiest attitude. And that's okay because they went through years or months of working in an environment that didn't support them. And I looked at it as an opportunity to turn things around. So naturally, I would show up with a big smile on my face, a positive attitude, and always showing up that way and being that support for others, being showing vulnerability so that way it can open up the space to have that psychological safety that we all look for. I talk about how the last certification or the last course that I did to show that, hey, we can do learning as well, and that inspires others to do the same. And there hasn't been one time where modeling this for others didn't change either their attitude or their actions.
Mm. So we're talking role modeling here, which is
Yep.
one of the most powerful ways to influence. We can't change anybody, but we can
Yes.
influence and have an impact on others. And we know that whether that's consciously or even subconsciously, it's just powerful. And I think whether you're a leader or not a leader, in some ways we're all leaders of our own lives, but
Yes.
when you show up in a room, you're role modeling, and whether you're wrong, and it's being very conscious, isn't it? Whether you're modeling
Yeah.
a positive or a negative or a disgruntled, complaining attitude, whatever it is, that has and if leaders are listening to now, is what else can they think about to have a greater impact? As I say, they can't change their team or the organizations. But what other things can they do to ensure that the environment is in a place that can create more happiness and more positivity and more, I guess, sort of satisfaction in their job?
Yeah. So what I have found that once the change agent starts to role model, as you had said, exactly what it is that we want to see to foster more happiness, that team starts to form its own model of what it looks like to be happy, to be happier, and people start to feel more fulfilled. Now, once that starts to happen, and mind you, I want to be very clear that this is not an overnight thing. This happens over a course of, um, 6, 8 months to a year before you actually see any changes. But once that starts to happen, then the team itself starts to form, and people are open to how can we be better at what it is that we do. And this is where, I use what I call the impact model to create what I call the happiness blueprint, which is very unique for each team. And this is all about inspiration, about setting goals for each other, for the team. This is about changing your mindset and showing this mindset to each other, and keeping people honest. This is about empowerment. So P for power, which is all about empowering people to be able to do things autonomously without having to be told. It's about alliance, all about relationships, building those long-lasting and tight relationships to have better communication and better collaboration. It's about care, which is all about psychological safety and creating a vulnerable space where there's no place for blame, but merely learnings. And finally, T for transformation, which is all about measuring and iterating what is working and what is not working. So, there will be times where, hey, you know what? We're having a communication breakdown. Let's address this.
Mm.
And, that's when I'll be like, all right, hey guys, what do you think about doing a communications workshop? So this way we can better understand each other. And people are open to it because they've already changed their mindset. They've already come to acceptance of what's been happening. Now, once the team starts to form like this, it actually starts to influence other teams. So a lot of people say, oh, you have to start from the top, which is all fine and dandy, but let's be real here. A lot of times when we start from the top, it never trickles down. And so I find that when we start at a team level and we start to form that team and create what I like to call a culture bubble, then that culture bubble starts to influence other teams, and they're like, hey, I see that you guys are really happy and you guys are performing really well. How can we do that? And that's where somebody from that team can go over and say, hey, here's what we're doing to change things. Like I said, this is not an overnight thing. This takes time. And if you want to be happier in your workplace, you start with yourself. Then you move on to, one or two other people that that you can have a tighter relationship with and influence. And eventually get your whole team on board. And that
Yeah.
make your workplace so much happier to be. And Mondays won't be as dreadful anymore. It'll make Mondays actually really exciting. It'll be something that you look forward to. You get to work with people that get you, people that are open to listening to you, to communicating with you, to collaborating with you, and honestly, having fun. I mean, we don't talk about it enough, but no one wants to go to work to just be all serious. We want to go and have fun. Have fun in what
Absolutely.
it is that we do.
No, and I think it's interesting you talked about that almost culture bubble, and there's always the thing about making sure we go from the top and or go through the organization. I agree with you. I think you can do it from pockets of teams within an organization.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen where suddenly almost the leadership are noticing something different about the team, and there's been an intervention of a coach, and therefore what's been going on, what they've been doing, that they seem different, buzzy, positive, they're getting things done. There's just a pace about them, and actually it goes back to that. But think about role modeling. People see behavioral change and start to have a wave of impact there, which is fantastic. Just want to circle back on the piece on happiness.
Yes.
And it can appear to be, is that just, and I'm not being disrespectful to yourself or what you're doing, is happiness a bit sort of fluffy, and how do we make it really grounded in a reality of people's lives, and I'm, in that sense, in the workplace, to make it, this is really important. And I don't know how you want to answer that. I'm sort of throwing something at you, which
No, I love this question because I get it a lot. People think that it's a fleeting emotion. It's rainbows and unicorns, and that it has nothing to do with, the workplace. In reality, Sure, there is a happiness that is fleeting, external happiness, but there's also internal happiness. This is where um, it is what I like to call eudaimonia, and this is a Greek word for flourish, and this is internal happiness when you feel fulfilled at what it is that you do, and it gives you this sense of joy, the
Mm.
sense of happiness. And when it comes to being happy at work, it means that you're engaged. And there's so much science and there's so many papers on this that we have seemed to ignored over the years. They say that 77% of the global workforce is disengaged. And it's because they're not flourishing. They're not happy. And it's the internal happiness. When you give somebody a job to do and it doesn't fulfill them, it's just, moving, um, what my wife likes to call moving the peanuts around. People aren't fulfilled with that. People want to feel needed. And when you're doing work that matters, now all of a sudden you have people engaged.
Mm.
And when people are engaged, they're happy.
Yeah.
And happy people, they show to perform way better. They take 10 times less sick leave. I mean, think about that for a second. We take a lot of times we take sick leave. We're like, you know what? I need a mental health day. But if you're happy, you don't need to take a mental health day because you love going to work.
Mhm. No, I'm with you on it, and it's interesting. And I was only asking you because I know you. This is all rooted in research, and
Yes.
it's not woo woo, and it's not all woolly at all. And because that happiness piece is all about that satisfaction, that fulfillment, that enjoyment and engagement, and everything else, and the fact that they have less days off because they're happy and enjoy what they do and feel fulfilled, and they're contributing something bigger. And I think that's the important here. This whole happiness piece has such a ramification on
It does.
a not only the productivity and innovation of a company, but also the profitability as well.
Yeah.
Because I know that matters to organizations. Is important to be sustainable and profitable.
I mean, you want
Um,
to talk about productivity. Happier people have been shown to perform 12% better. They're 12% more productive. Now, that may not seem a lot, but take 10 people being 12% more productive, and that's scale. And,
mm.
and you can't beat that.
No, and I think that's fantastic, and I think that's what we're almost distilling down here. This is something that's tangible and can
Yeah.
have a great impact on your organization and your teams. And as you say, when you start to see teams becoming a lot more happy and satisfied and fulfilled, it has an impact on other teams and there's a groundswell that comes with that. Um, just going through your impact, I don't want to go through all that. There's one thing that struck me, and you mentioned. I'd like to just understand a bit more about that. Is the alliance piece, how that
Yeah.
works, how you use alliances within your organizations, within your teams to build and have this impact of happiness within the organization.
That is such a key, Julian. I mean, we think about relationships in the workplace as, oh, they're just work people. Well, no, they're not just work people because we spend a third of our lives with these people. So, in order to get the best out of our teams, we need to get to know each other. And what better way to know each other than to know each other as people? So, I love to have lunches or coffee chats, like literally going out for a coffee with a person for a half an hour can make so much difference. So now you get to talk about who they are, what they care about. Do they have a family? What do they like to do in their spare time? Do they like to run? Do they like to cycle? Do they like to brew beer? Who knows?
Or make pizza.
or make pizza. But when you start to get to know people as people, you naturally create a tighter bond with that person.
Mhm.
Now you're able to better communicate, and you're able to better collaborate with those
Mhm.
people, because now a person when a person has a connection with you, they're able to be a little bit more open, right? They're able to say, hey, you know what, Antony, you said this thing the other day that really, it didn't sit with me well. Oh, I'm really sorry that I said that to you. How can I fix things? Oh, just please don't say it again. Okay, I'm really sorry. Let's go have a coffee, and if you want to talk about it, or if not, let's put water under the bridge, and
Mhm.
now I understand a better way to communicate with you. Whereas if you didn't have that relationship with that person, it'd be a
Mhm.
lot harder for you to have that type of conversation,
Mhm.
you know? And when it comes to collaborating on big projects, people need to be able to talk to each other. People need to be able to be on the same vision, to work towards that shared common goal.
Mhm.
And so building that relationship outside of just work. Oh, this person is good at this. Okay, that's great. But who are you as a person? And that builds the tighter bond, that forms the the psychological space that people need. So in the impact model, I look at it as it feeds into care. It feeds into
Mhm.
vulnerability, psychological safety, and gives the space for people to be who they are, and not to
Mhm.
be blaming, and to just have more acceptance with diversity.
Mhm. And it's building relationship not out of just, oh, so I get to know this person, therefore I can collaborate better, or therefore I can get this away, or I can talk to that person. It's
No.
building relationship in despite all that, just to get to know them as a human being.
Yes.
And I think it's sometimes just changing our intentions to be, I just want to get to know Anthony, just want to have a coffee with him. And it changes the whole tone, it changes your body language, what you talk about, and you just naturally build this relationship with people. And it's a little bit like when I go to networking events, rather than going with, I want to get some leads, I want to get some business. I don't even go with that mindset at all. I go with, I just want to connect with people and see if I can help them. And that's my intentions. And therefore I build those relationships with people. And I think we need to do far more of that within the workplace and outside of that as well. But also, I think it's that building that community around using it, because there's at times when we need an Anthony in our life to G us up and give us some sense of happiness. If I'm not feeling very happy today, I want to talk to Anthony because he's going to make me feel a bit more, yes, I can do this. Anthony's there. Or
Yes.
I need somebody who's got some real wisdom on something. I'm struggling with this solution, how to overcome this. I need that. But that's all our relationships. So I think it's important to have that people around us, isn't it?
Yeah, and it even feeds into resilience, because then it's like, oh well, I want to do this, but I'm not very good at it. Oh, come on, Antony, I know you can do this. I know you can do it. I've
Mm.
seen you do it before, and you did this, this, and this, which will feed into exactly what it is that you're doing. Oh, okay, maybe I'll try it out.
Yes.
You know? But when you don't have that relationship, you can't build on anything.
Mm.
It's like building a house with no foundation.
No,
It'll
totally.
crumble.
No, absolutely. I could talk to you for a long time, Anthony. I love my conversations with you, and I hope my audience have loved your insights you've shared. I really appreciate that, and I love your happiness, and I love it's rooted in not just in just woo-woo stuff. It's but in science, but also what you've learned over time through some difficult moments, certainly from your childhood. And I really appreciate you sharing and being open about that.
Of
If
course.
people want to connect with you and get in touch with you, what's the best way of doing that?
Well, I mean, the best way is through LinkedIn. I practically live on LinkedIn, so you can uh, Google or sorry, if you Google my name, LinkedIn will come up. But you can go on LinkedIn, you'll find me there. Or you can reach me the old school way by email at Antoni@smilingbowtie.com. Or you can just go to smilingbowtie.com and you can message me through the platform.
Fantastic. And I'll put all those in the episode notes as well. Thank you, Antoni, for your time today.
Thanks so much, Julian.